And thank you, Rose Gakuo from our DSM studios. As earlier mentioned, we are coming to you from the Lord Errol in Runda, Nairobi, and this is Punchline, proudly powered by Telkom. In the ring tonight, it's Gladys versus Gladys, two women known to say what needs to be said, irrespective of who won't like it. Maybe it's a Gladys thing. Gladys Boss Shollei of Annama and Gladys Wanga of Embrace. Ladies, welcome to Punchline.
Thank you.
Let me begin by just outlining to the public how we're going to conduct this interview. The first and larger part of the interview will focus on your referendum proposals. Then we'll move on to your political ideology, your positions on the war on corruption, and we'll talk about women in politics. And so let's begin with the basics on the referendum. And I'll start with you, Gladys Shollei. Do we really need to amend our constitution at this time?
I think not. They add, and if there are any parts of the constitution that be amended, there are few of them. If you must remember that we already went through a process of this constitution-making process, and we already know where Kenyans were not happy. There were the contentious issues and the non-contentious issues. So the starting point should be, can we look at our constitution and look at where there were contentious issues and work towards a program for trying to address that. There is no need even to start by going across the country to collect views, because we have those documents available to us. Secondly, there is also the aspects of there was certain legislation that needed to have been passed by certain time frame. In the constitution, there is a schedule. We have not exhausted that. For example, no legal framework has been put in place to ensure that we have been able to meet the one-third gender principle. That's one example. And there are many other pieces of legislation that also touch on counties. So unless we have exhausted that, then we are clamoring to create something new when we have not fully attempted to implement the constitution.
All right.
And I think, and on saying this clearly, and as must say this, BBI is going about getting the constitution amended the wrong way. It is, first of all, it's not anchored in law, because our law creates only two ways of changing the constitution, either by popular initiative or by
But aren't you jumping the gun? BBI has not yet come out with what they intend to do. We don't even know, beyond newspaper reports, that they want to change the constitution.
And first of all, what they're doing is they're going around the country collecting views. The question is, who clamored for the need to collect views? And I want us to go back to the point where our country, if you remember, when we had the 2010 constitution, there was riots across the country. There was Saba. There was the killing of Ouko. There was Matiba and Rubia being detained. There was a clamor across the entire country for the need to change our constitution at that time. Even the churches were involved. NCCK was involved, if you remember. That's how Reverend Mutava was born. If you remember, Bishop Okulu. In fact, at some point, political forums were banned and people started going back to churches in order to have the discussions.
Fair enough
there.
on Shollei.
So there was a need at that time.
Fair enough. Your response.
Let me say this. First of all, that Shollei answers that there is no need to amend the constitution is a big surprise to me, because Shollei herself has a constitutional amendment bill before Parliament. What is it seeking to do? Amend the constitution, which means we must agree that there is need to amend the constitution. Saying otherwise is not.
She's saying we don't need to go the, I beg your pardon. Yes. She's saying we don't need to go the popular
referendum, amend the constitution.
Your question is very clear.
No, my answer.
Do we need to amend the constitution?
What is your answer?
And Shollei's response was no. My answer is yes. We do need to amend the constitution. The constitution is not a dead document. The constitution is a living document. The constitution is dynamic. The constitution is something we live in and we fit in. The constitution is for us. You know, is meant for us as Kenyans to look at it at any given time and see if we need to amend it or not. And if you look, and if you're a serious Kenyan and politician at this point, you know Kenya is in a constitutional moment. And we do not need to go back in history the same way we did before, you know, like what Boss has recounted, for us to amend the constitution. And the issues of the BBI are very clear. And I'm surprised you know, that Boss says we do not need to go around the country to hear what Kenyans say. This current constitution that we live in is a constitution that is anchored on public participation. It is a key critical component of the constitution.
So you are confirming that out of the BBI will come a referendum?
You cannot do anything without seeking views of Kenyans. If you're going to result in a referendum, if you're going to result in changing the constitution, if the BBI process is going to result in changing the constitution, then you need to hear what the views of Kenyans are. But you are right that we cannot jump the gun at this moment. I hear people saying all over the place that I oppose the BBI. What are you opposing? Because, let me just finish this point.
You'll have your response.
You'll have your response and you'll have your chance. Because what the BBI has outlined are 9 key issues that came out of the handshake. These key issues: lack of national ethos, divisive elections, corruption, devolution, our shared prosperity, and so on. These key issues are issues that are problematic to us. So are we saying that divisive elections are not problematic? What are we opposing exactly? So those who are opposing the BBI process should tell us what exactly they are opposing, because there is no report yet.
Boss Shollei.
Yes, I think let's make it clear first, and it's good not to take things out of context. Yes, I do, Gladys. I do have a constitutional amendment bill in Parliament. But if you listen to my answer, what I said, we need to look at our schedule of our constitution. There were certain laws that needed to be passed by a certain time. Those laws have not been passed. Part of my constitutional amendment is to ensure that that which the actual constitution currently as is needs amended should be amended, and we can do it through a constitutional amendment, or we can do it by passing an act of parliament. We have failed in passing an act of parliament. That is correction number 1. Number
so
2, hold on, let me finish. I think let's give me my time so that I want to put this. And this is very important, because I also we need not to confuse Kenyans. BBI, the reason why when people say jumping the gun when you oppose BBI, we're not jumping the gun. We are just saying that already the process is flawed in the first place. One, you cannot go to the public and say, tell us what you think.
Why not?
No. What you do, and this is a threshold that is required in any process of collecting views. You must, when you're doing public participation, you present something to the public and tell them, we would like your views on this particular document. What is happening now is people have not been given, on BBI, they have nothing. That is wrong.
That's not accurate, because you already have 9 points out of the agreement of the president and the former prime minister. So basically, it is reasonable to say that Kenyans already know what these 9 issues are, and that they were informed that they would be going around the country seeking views on those 9 issues.
No, the question is, even who developed the 9 points? You know, people are not understanding this. It is not for 2 people to shake hands, then develop 9 points and take it to the public.
Okay, so
what should have actually happened? Hold on a minute. What should have actually happened? The correct way to do it is Raila Odinga was supposed to have called his parliamentary group meeting of ODM and said, these we think are the challenges. Go test them out to the public. Let the MPs and the other elected leaders and MCAs and governors start beginning to discuss it. They should, and then it's Jubilee should have done the same thing. Uhuru Kenyatta should have called a parliamentary group meeting of Jubilee and said, there are these issues, can you go and investigate? Then so that if at that time the 9 points emerge from there, then they look legitimate. But as long as they emerged from the conversation of 2 people, it is an illegality ab initio.
Let me put it to you this way, and I'm sure you would want to respond to what you've heard Shollei say. How would you respond to those then who assert that the BBI is purely meant to scuttle the chances of the Deputy President William Ruto from ascending to power?
So first, before I go there, there are some untruths that have been said here that I have. First of all, those 2 people that are being referred to derogatorily by Boss Shollei are the president of this country and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who gathered almost half the votes of this country. The context of the handshake was such that this country was tearing apart. These 2 people hold the aspirations of those sections of this country. And when they shook hands, any Kenyan, anywhere, whether you support the handshake or not, you will agree that the political temperatures came down. And let me say, after these 9 issues that they read on the steps of Harambee House were developed, they brought this as a motion to Parliament. And we debated this motion in Parliament. I don't know where Boss Shollei was at that point. We debated it. We passed it as representative, legitimate representatives of the people. When I speak in Parliament, I speak for 400,000 voters who voted me in Homa Bay. I speak on their behalf on the issues that were raised, that these are important issues. And even when you mention them, they are. Isn't corruption and a key problem that this country is facing? These are not issues from Mars. Aren't divisive elections problems? I mean, they're not issues from Mars. So coming to the point where you're raising, I think it's a fundamental issue, because I think all the opposition to the BBI process is based on the fact that some people feel, supporters of the deputy president feel, that this whole process of the handshake was meant to stop his drive or his ambition to get to State House in 2022. But that is where they're losing it. This country cannot be about one person going to State House in 2022. You cannot say you want to go to State House in 2022. What country are you going to lead if the country is so divided and it's apart and it's fighting? So the first thing is to bring the country together. Then you can go to State House if you so wish.
I'll allow a 30-second rebuttal before you move on.
First of all, we cannot say it's not about a person going to State House. Also, this country is not about two people creating positions of prime minister so that they can be able to get to State House through the back door.
All right, and that's
so it is not about persons, and that's why I said let's go back to the people. On the state of the nation, which she's referring to, was debated in Parliament, was the state of the nation addressed by the president.
It was motion on the BBI. It was a motion on the BBI. Who was engaged to people? Is your woman rep in Parliament or is she somewhere else?
No, I think let's not get there. I think that's being unfair and being now, you know, talking down another person. Seconds, I think that is unfair. But I think what you should say is I'm not talking about the motion. A motion in itself, first of all, is not a law. It does not override the Constitution. The Constitution has a way of setting public participation has a process.
That's fair. I think the point that Honorable Wanga is trying to make is that elected representatives who carry with them the will of the Kenyan people had an opportunity to ventilate on the matter. But be that as it may, you've raised an important point about what it appears that the BBI objective is, and I want to talk about it in the context of what Embrace is doing. Therefore, Honorable Wanga, Team Embrace has proposed the expansion of the National Executive to include a Prime Minister and two deputies with 2 seats set aside for women, among many, many other proposals. But let's just focus on the executive. Explain to us how this creation of these additional positions benefits the ordinary Kenyan.
Okay, so our proposal to expand the executive is on the BBI point on inclusion. We were presenting on the BBI point on inclusion. And how do you create a country that is more inclusive in terms of, or seen to be more inclusive? Because what has caused us to fight is when we went into this presidential system that we currently are in, there is a position for president and deputy president. And what has happened even in the last 5 years of the Jubilee regime, it was like 2 communities took everything in that government. And that is what created a lot of discontent. So to create inclusion, we said, why don't we have power more dispersed so that you have a president, you have a deputy president, you have a prime minister and 2 prime ministers. How does it help Kenyans? Creates cohesion, creates national unity in which Kenyans can now go about their business, you know, feeling like they are included, and we have a more inclusive process.
All right. Yes, you know, and there's many, I agree that it is actually good for a country when there is inclusivity. But inclusivity does not necessarily have to happen at the prime minister, president and deputy president level. It can happen in other appointive positions, for example, the cabinet, so that you tell yourself, if the president and the deputy or the prime minister, if they're there, come from certain communities, then we can make sure that the cabinet reflects the rest of Kenya. There is state corporation chairs, there is CASs, there is PSs. So it is not only in those particular seats. Also remember, there's been other suggestions that you can, in order to include the person who garnered, you know, the 40% votes or 45% votes, is to strengthen the office of the leader of opposition. Because actually opposition is a very good thing in a country. But when everybody is on the table, what happens? Like what the situation we're having now. What happens is we literally almost don't have an opposition in Kenya anymore.
And that's a fair point. But let me ask you this.
No, you're not giving me enough time, because I haven't finished making my point.
Please make your points quite briefly.
So what we are saying is that is not, in fact, in the process of doing it. It is not, and it's not a required threshold. And so have Kenyans been given an option? that how do you want the cabinet to be laid out in order for you to feel. Give them, if it's about inclusivity, let's give them several options of achieving inclusivity.
For instance, then you, for instance, as Inua Mama, could have very easily then gone to the BBI and presented those other options. You did not use the opportunity while they were going around the country to present your views, including such like this.
Personally, I wouldn't go to BBI. Because first of all, like I've said, it's an illegality. And number two, the persons who are actually the members of the BBI initiative, look at, I mean, some of them are failed lawyers. They've never been distinguished in their life. Some of them have never been able to accomplish anything in their professional lives. When we were making the constitution, in the 2010 constitution, we ensured that we had the committee of experts. It was people who came with knowledge and expertise in the constitutional making process. On that, it fails the threshold. On public participation, it fails the threshold. On grounding on law, it fails the threshold again. So it is an illegality.
All right, let me pose the question to you this way, and I'm sure you want to respond. At the end of the day, for many pundits and observers, they boil down the argument to this, that what you're calling inclusivity is only inclusivity for the political class and not necessarily for citizens, and what you're doing essentially is creating positions for people who cannot win elections. How do you respond?
There's a very very derogatory point that Honorable Boss has spoken to the credentials of the advisory committee. And this committee is chaired by Senator Haji, who's an accomplished person in his own right, Professor Adams Olo, you know, Paul Mwangi. These are serious lawyers. And I think if we go down the list, we'll see them. So I think if you don't like the process, you don't necessarily have to drag down the people. This is an advisory committee, remember. It is not the committee of experts that is going to draft a constitutional bill or whatever. This were a group of advisory team told, can you listen to what Kenyans are saying, feel what Kenyans are saying. So on the other point that you raised, that this creates positions for politicians who cannot win elections. In fact, I don't think anybody will sit on that table that is not influential enough, that brings something up and that represents people. So I think this notion that this is about failed politicians or this is about creating positions is delusional.
What about her argument that the place for an election loser should be the leader of the official opposition and strengthening
so one of the, and I wish Gladys Boss presented to the BBI, because some of the options she's giving, I think everybody was just giving what they thought to the BBI would be the best way to create inclusion, to strengthen devolution, and all of the other points. So I wish they just went and gave their
But is it a valid
views.
point?
That
is it that the position of official leader of the opposition
should be created was a presentation we made. In fact, what we said was that when an election is held, the person who garners the second highest number of votes and their running mate, the person who garners the second highest goes to the Senate as leader of opposition there or leader of the minority there, and the person who is the running mate goes to the National Assembly as the leader there, so that there is no vacuum in leadership, especially in the houses.
And specifically on that point, and allow me to stay with that because these are their proposals really. By making that particular move, was this your way of settling the issue of which is the upper house and lower house? In that the one who runs for the presidential position ends up going to the Senate and his running mate goes to the National Assembly?
I think it was not in a consideration about the upper and the lower houses.
Is it an important issue?
I don't think it is an important issue. I think what should happen is the roles of the Senate and the roles of the National Assembly, as outlined in the Constitution, should just be followed. Senate should stick to their roles, and National Assembly should stick to their roles.
I think, and we need. I think what Gladys has done is really answered the question. If you want inclusivity, the fact that you have strengthened the leader of minority in the Senate and in the House is already inclusive enough. In fact, they are like prime minister, deputy prime minister positions really. So that is enough for including, rather than creating more seats, because then that is creating a bigger burden on Kenyans to be able to start having state cars, state officials, more first ladies and second ladies and third ladies and fourth ladies to come and burden us. So this is ongeza muzigo. I think so you owe me that it's my turn to speak. And that's why when you look at it, the way they are designed, you've said it correctly, they are designed to create space for those who've never made it to win an election as a president, so that they can have certain people to get prime minister and divide the positions among themselves. What we are saying is those same people, if you garnered almost half the votes yes, which I respect Raila Odinga for, then let him be leader of minority. And if that office is strengthened, he has a lot to contribute to this country, which he has done in the past. I think he should allow us to...
The problem we are dealing with here is we think Raila Odinga will live forever, and all these things are being created for him as an individual. This is not about Raila Odinga. This is not about any current politician. This is about Kenya as a country and its foundation and where it will go.
Let me just make this statement as we conclude this section, because we must move along, Honorable Shollei. I think what we can also appreciate is that what Embrace did is that they had two options that they gave the BBI team, and this one about the opposition was a second option in case the first past the post system was maintained. Having said that, you've brought out some interesting points, Honorable Shollei, about expanding positions and what that would mean if you have to have more cars and etc. And we do know that there's a bit of an affinity for that, if you like, with the political class. But are you really beyond reproach? Because yourself, you have proposed the expansion of the legislature to 548 MPs. So what is the thinking around that? Don't you believe that as it stands, the legislature is already a huge burden on Kenyans?
Yes, first of all, I think the 500 and something is inaccurate.
What is your exact figure?
Let me explain it this way.
What is your figure?
Hold on. Let me just explain, because that's where you lose people as the media.
What's the number?
Hold on first.
That's the question.
I think
it's fine. She can respond.
Let me explain this. What I clearly said is, if we look at what it's into our budget, because we need to punguza mzigo. My argument was the mzigo is in the executive. Okay. So we need to target the costs in the executive. If you look at it, the executive takes more than 75% of our total budget. Parliament is only 1.5%. So even if you did away with the entire parliament, you would only save 1.5%. But we are making Kenyans think that they're going to save a whole lot of money. What happens when you reduce the numbers and nothing changes within within our costings? You must also tell yourself is, so let's go where the mzigo is. And that is our biggest challenge. If you look, the commissions, they will have 3 Mercedes-Benz, 5 vehicles, and so on being given to these positions. That is where the mzigo is.
The same could be said about the allowances that members of parliament drop, and the fact that by adding these additional positions, we would see their bill, whatever it is, going up by 32%.
And that's why I said, Anne, when we did this research we did in 2015, it is still the same figures. It's gone up a little pro rata. Yes, so at that time, 62% of the total budget went to executive. 20% was going to the consolidate fund services. 1.1% to the judiciary at that time. It's increased a little now. Parliament was 1.2, now it's up at 1.5. And at that time, counties were getting 12. Now they're getting 15%. So if we want to truly be honest to Kenyans, let us tell them the truth about where the mzigo is.
And for you, because it is with the executive. It is
with the executive. Okay. So there are other ways. And then there is also another mzigo that we have as a country: corruption. We lose 30% of our revenue to of the revenue we collect, and used in the country to corruption. So corruption is another mzigo. Sometimes we tend as politicians to say big words that appeals to the public, but we are actually deceiving them. Let us begin to become honest. And if one wants to speak about mzigo, let's talk about figures. I also want a total costing on the additional seats, what it will cost if we have extra prime minister, deputy prime minister. And I'm saying this is something that can be cured in already existing bills. I would have said that people who are nominees, we want people who are nominees of the leader of opposition would then be made sure that they're given some powerful ministries so they can feel, so they be CSs in powerful ministries so they can be included. Okay, we can use other methodology to do it. And I think on last point...
No, ma'am. Let's move on. Let's allow a rebuttal.
Yeah. So I think what Boss is saying about Mzigo not being in Parliament is right. I agree with her on that. But I want her to refuse the temptation to support that Mpunguza Mzigo bill, which in my view is a joke taken too far. In fact, I was shocked that Boss was on a podium.
Mzigo is a joke taken too far?
It is a joke taken too far. Why? Because, Anne, we are talking about abolishing constituencies. So what you're talking about is you don't have 290 constituencies. You have people elected in counties. So Nairobi County, which has 4 million people now, will now have 2 representatives, same as Lamu, which has 170,000 people. Homa Bay County, which has 1.2 million people, will have 2 people, the same as Isiolo, which has 2 constituencies at the moment. It does not make any sense. Secondly, the reason I'm saying it's a joke taken too far, for the women of this country, in fact, for any woman leader, especially us who sit on affirmative action position, to stand up and support a bill that is the biggest, the most brazen attempt to claw back gains made by women over the years. It is punguza mzigo. Why? We are saying in the National Assembly we will have 2 women, one woman elected and 1 man in the county. Then there will be no position for the special seats. Nothing in the Senate. Senate will just be 47 people, everyone fight for yourself. County assemblies will just be whoever is elected, everyone fight for yourself. We cannot allow a clawback. In fact, I declare total war on punguza mzigo. I will fight it to my last breath. Punguza
I have
mzigo,
a feeling you're about to literally put on these gloves.
Anybody, any woman leader who stands on a podium and supports punguza mzigo, yet you stand on the shoulders of giants who fought for the positions we hold. Shame on you.
Okay, no, let's put it this way.
Question, do you support punguza mizigo? Does Team Inua Mama support the punguza mizigo initiative?
I do not speak. I'm not the spokesperson for Inua Mama, unfortunately.
But you remember?
No, but I am a lawyer. I cannot purport to speak for if I have not been given
Honorable
that position.
Gladys,
so let me put it, no, but I am a member. But I'm saying I'm not the spokesperson. And that's why what I'm giving you is my personal views. My personal views are in the public eye on punguza mzigo. One, I said, the element of and the philosophy kupunguza mzigo, I agree with it. The philosophy,
right?
All right. And I think if you listened, you may have listened to maybe other people saying this, but you must listen clearly what Gladys Shollei said. I said the philosophy of punguza mzigo I accept. The method that Ikuru Court has used to bring this start this popular initiative is anchored in law, because he's using the popular initiative, which requires 1 million signatures. He's going through the motions. As to whether he will succeed or as to whether I shall support it is something different from now. So you understand the difference? Because that has to come out very clearly. I have also said there are also some impractical things in the punguza mzigo. So on this one, actually, Gladys,
and that is true.
We do agree. Like, for example, you cannot put sentencing, which belongs to the criminal procedure and the penal code, to be in a constitution. It has never happened in the world. Number 2, you cannot put sentencing is when he says he wants people to be charged for life or not to be allowed to whatever. And also the criminal procedure, it must take 30 days.
Yes.
You cannot put in a constitution. What happens if the court can't finish the case in 30 days? Are we going to go to a referendum again?
But
no.
Let me ask you,
if
Gladys,
we talk about salaries also, let me finish. Salaries
please.
cannot, under any circumstance, be in the constitution. So yes, but what I'm saying, a Kuruo court has used the correct legitimate constitutional method of changing the law.
Yes.
When it comes to the Kiwanja, when it does come, and if it does come, then at that stage, I will be at the forefront on issues of civic education to the public to vote against it.
But
if I do not agree with it.
You are right that your position is quite clear in the public, and this is what is perturbing about the Inua Mama initiative. First, you made no presentation on a common understanding of what, if any, constitutional changes need to be made. The ones that have been made have been your solo kind of initiative. And so the question is, because she is quite right in quoting the Tharaka Nithi women representative, British Katha, who, by the way, at a forum where you, of course, were present, went ahead to say, quote, Dr. Okot collected views from Kenyans across the country. We are confident the assemblies will pass it, so seemingly giving support to it. Bottom line, because you're saying, oh, you are not the chairperson, let me finish. No, you now will let me finish. Because you were saying, you're not the chairperson, you're not the spokesperson, you cannot give a common position. Let's be frank. Inua Mama does not have any position on issues like this, which are of national importance. Instead, what you have resorted to is going out to public events, rallies like the one you had just this past Friday, to decampaign elected members of parliament.
No, I think you have to hear this. What Inua Mama is all about. Inua Mama is just that, Inua Mama. What we do is we each raise a fixed amount of money every month, just like the way the mamas at home do the chama. And we put the money together and take it to one woman leader in her area, and she can put that money to any of the economic empowerment groups for youth, for women, people with disabilities, and women of her choice.
And that is not what is in doubt here. What is in doubt is whether you have a singular position on what should happen in terms of a referendum. You do not.
Okay. And please, Anne, you have to allow me to speak. Yes, and it's because, you know what, you can't pull that thing on me that, you know, if you ask me questions and put me in a fix, that doesn't happen, because I'm a trial lawyer. I'm a trial lawyer, so that won't work. So you allow me to answer my questions.
Please do answer. Please do answer.
So answering my question is, when we go to the ground and have that event where we are supporting one woman leader, of course political talk will come out, and that is what has happened, and it is very normal. We are politicians. Apart from going to do the economic empowerment groups on the ground, we are also politicians. We will speak to topical issues that resonate with the ground. And yes, each of those women have their own views. But we know that this is not the time. If we are talking about, we are saying what is strong about Punguza Mzigo and what is weak about it. And you'll notice that on each of those points, people have varied views within the organization. But what we know is the time will come when it will be put as a question, when it does get there. And then at that time, we will go to the ground and we shall campaign and have a common position. And remember, when this has happened to us before, when we had the orange and banana. At that time, when the referendum question has been set, that is when the groups emerge.
You might even be surprised.
You might even be surprised that when the referendum question is put, we may find that Unua Mama and Embrace might have a common position.
So would I be correct to say that there's still time for consensus building? That is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Then let's move on.
Could I just say something about the issues of court and the referendum?
Briefly, ma'am, if you would.
Let me just say that because we do not have a chance to amend anything within that Punguza Mzigo bill, you either say no or yes, because Kenyans cannot be told like there's going to be an opportunity to amend it. There's no chance at all to amend it. We either say yes or we say no. And that's why I embrace myself, and confidently for Embrace, it's a big no. And very finally, the women's voices, and the reason Embrace was formed, the women's voices must be a part of what conversation is going on. We cannot wait for the end result. Our input must be within what is going to be the end result. So we are not going to be, as Embrace, part of a team that says we are waiting for the fight. In fact, the reason Embrace was formed was we sensed a constitutional moment, and we said as women of Kenya, our voices must be part of that constitutional moment.
All right, fair enough. I want us to move along and ask one more question regarding what has been proposed by yourselves as Embrace. And of course, you have proposed... actually, I'll pose it to you, Gladys, I beg your pardon. They have proposed a 50-50 gender rule in all state appointments, 50-50 mixed member proportional representation, among other measures. Do you support that? Do you agree that it is time for 50-50 equal gender representation?
Of course, that's the way to go. And and you must realize this, and I want to put it this way. And I think even when we have the punching, what are they called, gloves over here, you must remember that we are not, it's not Inua versus Embrace. I think what is important, and what I have always said, and I've said this publicly, that I actually appreciate the existence of Embrace. And I appreciate the existence of Inua. Why? For the first time, women's voices is coming to the fore. That women have a forum and a movement where they can be able to have their voice heard. Whether is it Embrace appearing before BBI, or it be it Inua Mama, which has decided that it's looking at whether to support Punguza Mzigo.
That's fair.
And because we has happened in our country in the past.
Kindly just answer the questions before you now, because we will talk about women in politics.
No, I've already answered your question. But what I'm saying is that I think it's important for you to also, the answer is simply yes. Of course, no one would have.
So allow us to move on, because we will get to that part of the interview when we discuss the role of women in politics, and you're well aware of that. So if we would stay on track, my next question to you then is this. If you do support that particular position of 50-50. Currently, as you have rightly put, there's already a constitutional requirement regarding something like not more than 2/3, which, as you have rightly said, has not been implemented yet. So what confidence, and I would pose to both of you since you're in agreement on this issue, what confidence do you have that even if this was to pass in a referendum and become law, that now 50-50 all of a sudden would be the proposal that can be implemented when on women it hasn't happened
Let me explain that. I think that one is, by the way, the reason why we are struggling to put this gender issue in the constitution is because in the this current constitution, it was placed there, but it said that Parliament shall put in place legislation to meet this requirement. Unfortunately, Parliament has failed in doing so. And that is why you find the women now are saying, let's go to a constitutional amendment. And Embrace, that is what Embrace is doing, which on that point, I agree with Embrace. Put it in the constitution so there is no doubt at all.
Not more than 2/3 is in the constitution.
No.
You know what there is not the implementation.
Not more than 2/3.
The principle is there, but then it goes on to say, Parliament shall put in legislation to implement.
Okay, right.
So now we are saying, don't leave it to Parliament to implement.
Fair enough.
Please put it in the constitution. So yes, that is definitely a positive on part of the recommendations that they did give. But that again, on that one, I'm saying, you may find that in Nua Mama and Embrace will at some point converge, because on some of those, there's on certain points they don't disagree at all, and on others they will disagree.
Let's bring in Honorable Wanga.
Yeah, so I think the question has been answered. We want it anchored like we did with county assemblies in 177. So what we succeeded with in county assemblies in 177, we didn't succeed with in the National Assembly and the Senate. So now with the constitutional amendment process, we want it anchored in the constitution, including how it will be effected.
Right. Let's move on to political ideology. Briefly, kindly be conscientious of time so that we can cover more ground. I'll start with you, Honorable Wanga, and I put it to you this way. That ODM, and indeed by extension, the Embrace Party ideology is quite simple. Stop Deputy President William Ruto from ascending to power. And why do we pose so? Because Governor Ali Hassan Joho, who of course is your deputy party leader, has already on the record said this, and I quote, if Raila says we go right, we shall all go right. If he says we go left, we all go left. Raila has told us to support Uhuru and oppose Ruto's presidential bid. So essentially, that's all you're doing, Operation Stop Ruto.
Yes. So, and that is, you've quoted Governor Joho, who's my deputy party leader, and by that I agree with him that for us, Raila is our party leader. We respect him, and to practicalize that respect, we usually say if he says left, we go left. If he says right, we go right. If he says handshake, we do handshake. But then let me tell you that there is a separation between the ODM as a party and Embrace as a women's movement. So that's why I don't want us to confuse. Embrace as a women's movement has a very simple agenda. One, we came to being to support the handshake between President President Uhuru Kenyatta and His Excellency Raila Odinga. And why? Because we saw that when there is violence in this country and when there is turbulence, the biggest sufferers are women. So we decided as women, as women leaders, we must support this process that is going to bring cohesion, peace, unity, and give room for development that will affect lives of women. So since then, and we've presented to the Commission on the Status of Women at the UN. We have done a femicide event at the University of Nairobi. We have, we have done a food security forum at JKUAT. We have presented to the BBI through a consultative process. We are, meeting with the Sudan. We are meeting with the Sudan women as Embrace, to just look at what their peace process can be. The women who are involved in the revolution. We are meeting African women presidents. So we are not just about the ODM party. No, we are women leaders. And by the way, Embrace, the reason Embrace goes beyond the ODM party and cannot be held down by what we say, and even what I say as you know, chair of ODM in Homa Bay, cannot be held to Embrace. And the reason, the reason is, Embrace is not just women in parliament. It is women who have been in parliament. It is women trailblazers. It is women governors and deputy governors. It is women in the civil society, women in professional organizations. I mean, we are broad, and we are a women's movement that are taking women's issues seriously. So please, don't tie us down, Kenyans, to ODM and what ODM says.
And I'm sure...
Just look at Embrace for what it is.
Fair enough. And I'm sure that if I was to pose the same question on political ideology and what is public perception, or what is what pundits opine to you about the real purpose of Inua Mama is to Inua Deputy President William Ruto to the presidency, you would say, no, that's not the point. And you have gone ahead to argue just a moment ago to say that the two movements are indeed good because women's voices are being put out there. So let me pose then to both of you this joint question, which is that at the end of the day, when you distill it, regardless of what you're advocating for, you are still, for instance, Embrace, primarily advocating for a position, a handshake position, in which you are not in the room, as Honorable Shollei outlined earlier. This was a position of two men who came together, regardless of their gravitas and their national stature, which may be all well and good, but you were not in that discussion that came up with a 9-point agenda. And so when you go out in rallies to say, we support this, are you not really, in fact, at the end of the day, pandering to the political opinions of men who themselves, let me finish, who themselves, and you will answer my question,
yes, I will answer
who are, at the end of the day, the ones who were initially responsible for the position we found ourselves in as a country. Honorable Wanga.
And we couldn't all have been in that room on that day at that time, but we did have the issues. When the issues were brought out, did they resonate with what we think was important to this country? Yes. The answer is yes. And the reason we formed Embrace in January of 2019 was to support a resolution of those issues that are raised in the BBI 9-point agenda. So we believe in the issues. We believe in the leadership of, I personally believe my party leader was in that room. He holds my aspirations and that of my constituents. So if he was in that room, and when the issues came out, you know, it's not like there were no issues. When they said a lack of national ethos, for example, I said yes. When they said a lack of inclusivity, I said yes. When they said divisive elections, I said, oh, yes.
Have a second bite to the cherry. I think it's about time I said something.
Yes. Would you answer it this way, Mwashimiwa? Would you answer it when I pose it this way? Again, the feeling is that there is no real radical ideological differences between both Embrace and Inua Mama from, for instance, the leading political movements in the country right now, which is Tanga Tanga and Kieleweke.
No, I think first of all, no, I want to go back because you posed a question that I didn't get a chance to answer, where you're saying maybe this is just that this is intended, BBI is intended to stop, or the handshake was intended to stop Ruto from the presidency.
Go ahead.
I think it's important to make this clear, and we've seen it in our history. No one can stop another person from being president. The only person who can stop the one from being president is the people of Kenya who vote, who goes to those queues. Because sometimes you're mentioning people who have only 2 votes. So we are talking about the people of Kenya shall decide. And then I think also, you must realize when you talk about people are feeling that Ruto is going to, this is intended to stop Ruto from the presidency. Yes, that is the feeling out there, okay? And this I'm speaking from what I hear, the voices of the people from Uasin Gishu County and most of Rift Valley. That is how we feel. And of course, they feel betrayed also because the president said it publicly and that he would support Ruto presidency once his term ends. He committed that. And in fact, and I would have expected the head of state as leader of Jubilee to say that Jubilee shall have a candidate. Yes, and him as a party leader said we shall have a candidate. But whoever wins at the nominations shall be the Jubilee candidate. That's how a party leader speaks. And then when you get this feeling that is coming out on the ground, and I'll tell, and let's be honest, because sometimes people are not honest about this. I know when the people in the Rift Valley, most of Rift Valley, and for sure I know about Uasin Gishu, when they woke up in the morning to go and vote in 2017, they were not waking up to go and vote for Uhuru Kenyatta. They were waking up to go and vote for Ruto, who was in partnership with Uhuru Kenyatta. And the same story can be said of Central Kenya. When people in Central Kenya woke up, people vote for the person that is closer to them that they know. In fact, I know that there are people who voted for me because maybe they didn't know me, but they knew the MCA. And because the MCA was affiliated to me, they voted for me. That is the reality of actual voting. And we must know that. So there is a ground to contend with when certain issues happen. And let us not take that for granted. And it seemed we have reached a situation in our politics where we think only a few players can decide. How come I'm not hearing that let's go back and speak to people? If I heard that the people of Kenya want to stop William Ruto, we shall listen to them. Let the people decide. And that time shall come. I do not know why we are worried about that now. The elections will come and we will vote at that time.
Would you kindly then, and I think that is well ventilated, we don't need to reopen the debate on that. You have already said that's not the issue.
Because you know, Boss has said the people of Rift Valley are feeling betrayed and you know, they expected the president to declare, you know, because he had already said he's going to support Ruto.
No, but I didn't say that. I think we expected the president to say that Jubilee shall field the candidate. That is the responsibility of a party leader.
Let me just say,
so I think that put it correctly. Say my exact words.
You said that the president promised Ruto, I mean, or said publicly that he would support Ruto in 2022. Now, what the president has said, and I'm not his spokesperson, but I've heard him saying that we were just elected. I mean, it is last year that we just finished with these election things. Can we work and then deal with elections when 2022 comes? That is what the president has said repeatedly. Kazi kwanza, siasa, tufanye baadaye. But this urge that he must say now, he must declare, he must do this, then that I think is a problem. And then there's the issue of going back to speak to the people. Now when BBI was speaking to the people, they said, why are they speaking to the people? We know what we need to do. Now they're saying, go back and speak to the people. So I really, what do we want? Is it a case of drinking water and preaching water and drinking wine? I don't know exactly.
That's fair. I haven't said, I said the people shall decide when elections come. That's fair. I think voting for the
public
referendum
can make their judgment based on what you've both said. So let me allow you to respond to the other question, which was the fact that there appears not to be a fundamentally different ideological difference between Keleweke Tanga and Inuadada and Embrace. Your response to that very briefly, ma'am, if you would.
No, I think that would be, what is the ideology of Keleweke? Then maybe I will know if it's the same ideology as Inuamama. And what is the ideology
Surely
of Tanga?
You're a politician in the public
life. No, I don't think I've had them.
They support categorically the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. They also support what they call a narrative of they are doing development on the ground, which is what has been opposed by others as early politicking. Sounds a little bit similar to what you do.
I think, yes. I think this is clear. I think what was called Tanga is a Deputy President going at certain forums to be open projects or work. That is his job as Deputy President. Yes. That is his job as the Deputy President. I expect him to actually go and open the roads, go and launch projects, because if he is a candidate and he has said he's a candidate, he will have to explain to us how many projects he opened, I mean, projects which Jubilee had promised were delivered. So that is, it makes sense to do that. And in any case, he is not doing. It also makes sense to support, and remember,
to not support BBI, which is what Tanga are saying. Pretty much almost the exact same script, that this is not an initiative that is founded in law, which you have said here.
I don't know if Tanga said the same thing, but
as
a lawyer, I just have to open the Constitution and see very clearly. It's in the Constitution. Anybody can read for themselves. So I'm sure the guys in Tanga are reading the Constitution too. Everybody does read the Constitution. It is clear. And you must...
What is clear? You know, it's like that phrase, the law is clear.
No,
what is clear,
what
exactly
is clear
here?
is that there is a parliamentary initiative and there is a popular initiative.
But there's no referendum question that BBI is doing at the moment. They are only talking to Kenyans about key issues that have affected us over
Let's not reopen debate on that because it has been ventilated. But allow us to all progress now to the question of corruption and how you both perceive what is the ongoing fight against corruption. Honorable Shollei, let me start with you because on March the 9th, at a rally at the coast, the Deputy President suggested that the war on corruption has been politicized. He said, and I quote, selective prosecution targeting predetermined individuals and projects and steamrolled by a narrative of convenient lies and falsehood and propaganda is not a fight against corruption. If you want to play politics, let's play politics. Simple question to you. Do you agree with him that what we are witnessing now being carried out under the administration of Uhuru Kenyatta is pure politics and not a genuine fight against corruption?
I think Uhuru Kenyatta's and the Deputy President, I mean, the government that they both are serving in, are completely committed in fighting corruption. Where we have had weaknesses is where people have raised it. And this has happened. The reason why between 2013 and now, why we were not able, and 2017, why they were not able to make any progress on corruption is because the institutions failed them. And by the way, the failure on this one, I will not say is on the president or the deputy president. The failure in fighting corruption rests with EACC, which was doing a bad job. You see now that it has sort of moved to the DPP and the DCI trying to lend a hand to be able to fight corruption. And yes, there has been cases of selective prosecutions or cases where people have been prosecuted. The truth is, they have a 0% conviction rate, actually, except for people who are taking bribes. So yes, they want to fight corruption. But even today, I would say that the government needs to step up. The institutions that are charged with fighting corruption have to step up. And I have constantly said that they must have an airtight case. Because I have studied on the issues of corruption, because I have been there, I have been charged, and eventually every single prosecution witness that they had was testifying in my favor. So how was that then a basis for charging somebody? So what we have said is have an airtight case, and I've said that many times, that the DPP must ensure that he has the sufficient evidence. He must have correct lined up the correct witnesses which can assure him a conviction. In fact, in other countries, if you don't score as high as a 90% conviction rate, you are actually fired as a prosecutor.
Fair enough.
So those are what we've been encouraging. And I think it's those failings that sometimes people read. I cannot purport to know what was exactly in the Deputy President's mind because I didn't read, and sometimes I prefer to understand the whole story. But I know,
that's fair enough.
I think
because I think
it's unfair to ask me what do you think you were saying. But I've said
surely
what I
you
think.
support him. It's fair to say what you think. In any case, isn't that what you are lauding right now?
No,
the
I
two
do
groups
support him,
saying what they think. Fair enough. So, Honorable Wanga, let me rephrase the question to you in this way. You spoke at a market on the 8th of May. At a stop, and you said, naibu wa rais Bwana Ruto, tunataka ujiulize kwa nini kila mtu ambaye amepatwa kuiba mali ya wananchi anakimbia anakuja kwako na wewe ndio wapokea. Birds of a feather flock together, end quote. It suggests that you believe that the Deputy President is one, not just shielding people who are corrupt, but that he himself might be corrupt. Is that your view, and that he is an impediment to the fight against corruption?
I think given the views that you gave, first of all, I support 100% the war on corruption, and I believe the handshake has created an environment within which the president can now fight corruption more aggressively. Because before, there were sacred cows, there was blackmail, I believe, you know, people saying, if you touch this one, we are crumbling, and the opposition is also on your neck. So I believe the handshake has done. And what I said on that day is exact truth, because at that time, you know, Waititu had been moving around with the Deputy President. He was now caught. The Samburu governor was seen on a Sunday with the Deputy President. He was charged. And then if you look at the pattern, for example, when CS Rotich has been charged now with this Aror and Kimwarer, you know, a very close ally of the DP, Oscar Sudi, you know, has hurled unprintables at the president just for making that move on charging for corruption. So what I was saying there is just what has been happening. Everybody who seemed to be touched with corruption appears to be an ally of the deputy president. Perhaps that's why he was saying on that Mombasa occasion that it's a political move. So he should ask himself, as I told him on that day, ask yourself, why are all these corrupt people just in your axis? Perhaps birds of a feather flock together, you know?
I think that's totally unfair, because if you look at it, Rotich was cabinet secretary for the National Treasury. Actually, in fact, if you look at one of the president's executive orders or statements from State House, he said that anything over £1 million shillings would be signed from State House. If there is anybody who had the closest working relationship with the head of state, it was Rotich. Yes, and Thuge. In fact, the president has economic advisors within State House. And therefore, I don't think if you are to say that those people were close to anyone, it would be to the head of state.
No, I made a very
and in fact,
I
and to make it, and even to put it, these are people who work in a government where both the president and the deputy president are the heads.
No, but we know this government.
So no, allow me to explain. So I'm saying it's let's not, we cannot, this issue of bundling people, I say so-and-so is affiliated to so-and-so, so-and-so is affiliated. It's not correct.
The only reason I was suspicious was because Oscar Sudi, who is a very close ally of the DP, came hurling unprintables, things you would never say to the president, including asking the president to resign for charging Rotich. To be honest, what would you conclude?
Let me ask both of you this then. So, because you both, what I'm hearing is that you both support the war on corruption. In fact,
I think
everyone does.
Every Kenyan does,
and in the way it is being carried out by the DC and the DPP. But do you believe that prosecutions alone, charging people in court alone, is enough to end corruption or to stop it? Or do you believe that there need to be fundamental changes to the system that make it that much more difficult to have corruption take place?
I think first of all, there has to be amendments to the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, because that is what it creates room and funds room for corruption. We have certain types of contracts, standard contracts that this country has used throughout, and nobody has ever questioned them, yet they are the same ones that are being said to have been corrupt. So if we think that those contracts are bad, then we should amend the contracts. When we say, and one of the issues you'll realize that, and the reason why this issue came up, the same contract that was used in building the SGR and the same contract used in building the Southern Bypass is the same contracts that were used in building, using, I think, in Aror and Kimwarer and many others. So what we should be doing as a country, if we think as if the statement that was indicated by, I think, I can't remember if it was DCI or DPP who made the statement, he poked holes into the type of contract. So my question at that time was like, oh, then we need to make changes to the type of contracting system that we use as a country. I think also we need to strengthen the anti-corruption authority. And I also believe strongly that we must strengthen the DPP's office in order. It's not enough to charge people. Sorry?
In what way?
I think he's terribly understaffed, and they need to be getting more senior lawyers to be able to get involved in the fight, because some of the cases are so complex that you need finance experts. In others, you need banking experts. So you find that sometimes they grant this thing. And I am on record in Parliament in trying to ensure that they got more resources to be able to get more staff to do that. I think also the other challenges that we have is also the one on corruption. Another weak point is the judiciary. I heard that they're going to have, I think one of the cases, they're going to have 140 witnesses. Believe me, it's going to take 20 years minimum. I can guarantee that.
Fair enough. Ways to seal loopholes?
I think, first of all, we need political goodwill. The president has shown a lot of goodwill. The deputy president must show goodwill as well. Why? Because, you know, even this Aurora and Gilmarer, they almost collapsed just by attacks on the DPP and the DCI from his allies. So there has to be political goodwill from that end. Other than that, I think in this year's budget, there's been more funding to the agencies, the Office of the DPP, the Office of the DPI, the Office of the Auditor General. And one of the proposals we made as Embrace to BBI is to include, just like the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury reads a budget every year, the Auditor General in April, before June when the budget is read, or is it July, the Auditor General in April should also read a statement on the expenditure of funds, in the sense that how did people spend the money that they were given, so that we also have that state of audit address by the Auditor General to Parliament, so that it's public, so that if your department misused the money, then when you come before a departmental committee asking for more, we'll ask you, first of all, see how you used your money before you move. So those are some of the proposals we made, including making economic crimes, some of these economic crimes non-bailable. Those are some of the proposals we made under women and the fight against corruption.
I'm sorry, I'm being told that we are out of time, and so it's quite no, madam, no. So unfortunately, I will ask these questions in quick fire in order to be able to just conclude this issue on women's representation, and I ask that you would answer them expeditiously so that we can be able to conclude on time. Let me start with you, Honorable Wanga. There is the feeling that even with what you have proposed in the executive, those positions created, and 2 being specifically for women, and now we're talking about the women's movement in Kenya in general, that you are willing to play second fiddle. Why are we not seeing from either group this kind of notion that we are going to support a women candidate? The time has not just come for 50-50, but that women should be running for the top post.
Yes, women should be running for the top positions. Governors, president, governors, senators, all top positions should be. In fact, we are going...
Martha Karua seems to be one woman who intends to vie for the presidency. Is that something that women would women political leaders could close ranks on and say, yes, we would prefer a woman president for a change instead of a man?
I think you must realize about someone running for president, we can't just... I think it would be not... to say that I will just support a person because they are a woman. No, I will support someone if I know they are competent and their vision and their drive and their capability to take my country forward and meet the aspirations of Kenyans, then I will support them. It may be a man this time, it may be a man, if I get a woman later, I also support. So I think it's too blanket to say any woman who stands. You've got to represent something.
Any woman, and I'm not campaigning for her, I'm just...
No, I'm just saying, saying, the thing is, she'll present her candidature, and if she's formidable enough, and she convinces her that all those things that I've said, then we will support her. And I think it would be unfair for me not to be able to say something on this one. It's unfair to say that the Deputy President is not, does not have any goodwill towards the support of the fight on corruption. I think that is entirely unfair. The fact that he's people from his region or his allies or certain people have made certain statements, those are not the statements of the Deputy President. Just the way I say I don't purport to speak for him, I don't think those other people are purporting to speak for him.
We are out of time.
Because it's also good to be fair to other people on air.
You have made your point. Again, if we would just return to the subject that we're dealing on now, which is about women in politics and how you are faring. There is a feeling that the women who are currently in the National Assembly, for instance, have pretty much argued the same as the men. And one clear issue has been when it comes to salaries. No single woman member of parliament took the position that no, the people of Kenya have said, regardless of what we think of our own, you may think of your salaries, they've said they don't want to see this increase. They do not believe that we deserve more. But on that issue, it was unilateral. And my question to you is this: do you believe the increase of allowances? Do you believe that women, for instance, should be required to be held at a higher standard than men in politics simply because there is affirmative action taking place to get more of them into government positions? Honorable Wanga.
I think women leaders are already held to very, very high standards. You have to work twice as hard to just get half the recognition. So women leaders are already really held to very, very high standards. For a woman to win a seat, men, you have to deal with issues of whether you're married, and if you're married, where you're married, and if you're married, it's a problem. If you're divorced, it's a problem. If you're single, it's a problem.
If you don't have children.
If you don't have children, it's a problem. So the standards are already very, very high, to answer your question.
But they expect that same high standard
So I wish
in how you debate in Parliament.
Yes, and women have done quite a bit of work in bringing legislation. And I think people sometimes say women are not doing enough. I mean, women are bringing this, you know, Gladys Boss chairs the committee on delegated legislation in Parliament. They have brought more reports than I think any other committee in that Parliament. And in fact, that committee, which was chaired by a man before, was like near dead. Right now, it is alive. It is the committee that brings more reports than any other. That shows you the strength of a woman.
Let me phrase it this way.
And other women have brought bills. I have a cancer bill in Parliament. Between Sabina and I, we have a bill on natural health referral facilities. Sabina has a breastfeeding bill. You know, basic education and so on. And women have so many, a lot of work going on.
Let me ask it to you this way. Let me ask it to you this way, because you've talked about the bills and including the work that you do as a chair of a committee. I suppose the argument is when there were real, and I'm not saying that the cancer bill is not a national issue, obviously it is, but when there was other debate at very heated times in our history, like was it 2014 when we were dealing with, was it the security laws, or just 2017 when we were dealing with the electoral laws, that there had been perhaps an expectation that women members of Parliament would not toe party lines, but would hold perhaps a higher standard. So what do you think of that? Is that fair to
I think I've been watching the women's movement and women in Parliament for a long time, and I've seen every Parliament I see a great improvement. And in this time, having been watching it from outside, and this time that I'm in Parliament and I've interacted with women, I think you might be surprised that we will get at least 50% of the governors as women. Because what has happened is they've been able to create their strength on the ground. They've been able to be seen, the visibility. And that's why I tell you now, even when we think about Inua Mama and Embrace, the great thing is that those women are beginning to show strength. And the ground is beginning to believe them as a formidable force. If you remember the people like the deputy president, how did he come into politics? It's YK 92, you know. So these political formations are what, so we want to promote, and that's why I support these two movements, because they are promoting women on the ground. They are giving them visibility, so that next time when we say we want to feel, we look at Gladys. Gladys, definitely, I think she stands a great chance of becoming a governor for Homa Bay. Why? First of all, the fact that she has been able to be very vocal in her party. She has been able to be vocal in Parliament, vocal as a politician, but she needed to go through that as a woman representative seat. So she got the affirmative action seat, but she did not waste it. She has used it as a good platform to profile herself, and she can move to the next stage, and we will get another woman who will grow like that. Hence the reason why the affirmative action programs are supposed to build women in order to make the electorate more confident in voting women the next time. Because that has been the challenge, that sometimes women, because they never actually get elected, they will never have visibility. But I think this is probably the highest visibility that I have seen in our politics.
They're just about to just go and leave us here talking, and I would love that, because I could talk to you both forever, and you know that they can switch off the cameras. But finally, it's time to deliver your punchline. I don't know if it is to each other's movements or to whom. I will leave that up to you. But because you've talked about a gubernatorial possibility in the room, I'll ask you to comment on that. What's next for both of you? Are you eyeing a gubernatorial post, and what is your punchline?
Well, any politician without ambition is as good as a car without oil in the engine.
There you go.
So we are looking into the future.
Okay.
And, you know, as we say,
Gladys Wanga?
kazi kwanza, siasa,
Okay.
So
I think I always believe that if you
gubernatorial,
sorry,
are your eyes set on being governor somewhere?
We will look at the seats and we will work on the numbers at that time. But right now, okay, because I'm not going to be a sensible person if I start announcing too early. What I need to do is I want to perform in my current position, because I know if I do to the best of my ability and the people of Wasingishu are happy, believe me, when I go there and ask for any seat, I'm going to get it.
Oh, and that.
So I have to perform first and get that. Thereafter, believe me, they'll hand it over to me.
That is certainly a punchline. I must say it has been especially wonderful for me to host you both. Yes.
Yeah.
To host you both, clearly Two women who are no joke. I think it's in the name Gladys. Thank you for watching Punchline, another episode next Sunday at 9. I'm Ann Kiguta. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.